We are live, and hello all. As you shuffle into the room from your various internet portals, I'm happy to welcome you. My name is Jay Frost, and as you may already know, I'm the host of the Philanthropy Mastermind series brought to you by DonorSearch. I say that first because we wouldn't do any of this if it weren't for them. They provide us the time and the resources to interview really brilliant folks, some of whom I'm lucky to be friendly with. Others are introduced to us for the first time. Today, we have a friend who's, I'd like to think, a personal friend, but also a friend to the industry in a pretty big way, talking about some stuff that are pretty tough topics. But before we go there, I want to encourage you to make use of this conversation, to be a part of it. And we can't see you, we can't hear you. Sorry about that. But we do want to hear from you. So the best way to do that is Q&A. You can see that right there. And in fact, if you'd like to do with this, you can go ahead and just say hello right in the Q&A right away. Let us know maybe where you're coming in from. In fact, that will appear on the screen. Just let us know that you're here. And if there's any thought that comes to your mind, either early on or throughout, any questions you want to ask and any comments you want to make, please make use of that. We really do want to engage with you. And with that, I want to introduce Cannon Brooke. Cannon is, of course, the director of prospect research and many other things, but he's at Chapman University, and he is speaking to us from, I guess, his home office right now.
My loft.
Your loft. Excuse me. Sorry. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but before I do that, so Cannon, hello, and do you want to say hello and maybe introduce yourself a little bit better than I've just done?
No, I think you did a great job. It feels like, yeah, we did this a year ago, and I did invest in this background. So I am upping my personal space. And
thank you.
Some of you may know me, some of you may not. You saw my picture. I can do a high kick. So
that is impressive. Yes. I
and
think
it's also dated. So yeah. So my name's Cannon Brooke. This quick intro. I'm a data strategist. I'm passionate about research. I help make sense of the noisy data that's out there for organizations, that muddy confluence between, I don't know, strategy and anecdata. I try to go more towards the strategy side than the anecdata. So what is anecdata, you're probably asking, right? That's an anecdotal bias that we have when we look at data. We've all heard it before, right? Oh, that person drives a BMW. Oh, they're rich, so they can give. Not necessarily. No, that's not. That's actually not how this works. They live in such and such place, $1 million home. Well, they're probably mortgaged up to their ears. We got to look at more context. We got to look at different data points across. So, been in the industry for about, oh God, we're going on 12 years, 11 years. So, started off working. Started off as a intern for, I was going to go into politics actually, and I got out of that, thank God. So yeah, opened up for prospect research in Hawaii, and that's what got me going. And I was in the islands. That's where I started my career. So, and that's where we met.
And somehow you made your way to Chapman. That's right. We met in Hawaii, which was lovely. I don't know why you left Hawaii, to be honest, although Chapman University is an incredible institution. So I understand.
It's an incredible institution. Yeah, California is fun. I love it. Being closer to family. So it's a 5.5 hour flight that can take its toll. So especially with a wee one.
That's right. You have a small child, so I know that we could talk about family and things. But I do want to make
people want to hear about
it. Yeah, they'd love to hear about your family. But let's talk for a second about your office, so people have some context. And by the way, this is not to say if your office doesn't look like this, go away. No. Be part of the conversation. But it would be helpful for those who don't know Chapman to have a sense about, you know, its size, its scope, you know, budget, that kind of thing, but also of your operation, fundraising as a whole, prospect research. Can you give us kind of a portrait?
Yeah, just shy. We're approaching 10,000 students. It's a small to medium-sized institute, great institution. The shop, the prospect research shop, there's 4 of us. I mean, if you count some of the students, we have a few of them. There's about 20, oh, excuse me, no, we did have some turnover. 13 to 14 fundraisers, and we are looking to grow like everyone else. So, I mean, I guess I'm kicking it off for our conversation later on that one, right? So we do have we're fully remote, and then now we kind of have a hybrid, hence why I'm at home. So a few days a week that we get to work. So.
Right, which I know is something we want to burrow into. It's an experience that a lot of people in the field generally, and in the research and prospect development field specifically, are navigating especially for those who were out of the office entirely and then went hybrid and then are working back potentially towards whatever normal was. I know there are a lot of things we probably won't be talking about at length, but I got to ask you about how you feel about this kind of normalization of whatever is happening as people move back to the office. Do you buy into that concept?
No, normalization, I think it's going to, yeah, and that's what everyone's concerned. I mean, Pandora's box has been opened up. We've proven, all of us, and everyone on this podcast can, like, we all know that we can do it. We were asked to work from home for almost 2 years. We did it efficiently. And now it's like, hey, come on back. Now it's kind of like, well, why? Why do we actually need to, especially research, right? So, and that's something that we're kind of struggling with now, to figure out how to move forward with that. So, because it is also a big benefit, right? So.
Sure, but okay, so what's the nature of the benefit? Could you describe that a little bit? Why is it a benefit?
It's a benefit to the office. You're just a lot more efficient when you're at home, right? I've found my productivity, especially with my team working from home, has just shot up tremendously. So that, and on top of, you don't have to commute, you don't have the stress of hitting the 55, the 405, the I-5, the 22, all Southern California.
Yes, for people who haven't driven it, it can be very stressful. You can spend a lot of time on the roads out there.
Oh, wait a minute. I want to say, I have a tip for you. Consider moving your plant to your left. It looks like you have feathers growing. Oh, dear.
Wow.
There we go.
You know,
I don't want to.
Actually, we don't mind that kind of comment at all. It's getting to be a little bit like Between the Ferns here. If anybody understands that reference, please feel free.
Great.
And we don't mind that kind of editorial commentary at all. So just keep it up, please. We appreciate it.
No, definitely. No, please. Thank you. Yeah. It's still.
And if there's anything growing out of my head, actually, it's just me. So
what I'll do is just move a little bit here. There we go.
Which is quite likely, actually. Well, so one of the things we talked about, of course, we're here to talk about the Algebra. This is your title. The Algebra of a high-performing research shop. I'm not allowed to use that term algebra because I'm married to a former math teacher, and she knows I don't know algebra. So before we go any further, why don't you tell us what that is about? What does that title mean?
Well, first of all, I wanted to make this as sexy as possible because I know that what we're going to be talking about can be conceived as a little bit on the dry side. So I don't want to say it's clickbait. No. I was just thinking about how we could really, again, this tipping the sacred cows and talk about what needs to be talked about. That when I was talking to Jay earlier before the session here, that 800-pound beast that's in the room, right? The turnover, like how we address the most, what is it? The highest value item in the office is your staff, right? And I've noticed on Prospect L, and this through in our industry, like we don't talk about like how to effectively manage, lead a team, how to run remote. Like I haven't seen a whole lot on that. And I just think like, what are we doing? Like we need to talk about this, some of the problems that we're having. So it's, as you know, in the industry, we already mentioned many times, like we're just having an existential crisis. People are just dropping out, right? The Great Resignation. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, that's just another one of those things where the phrase sometimes takes on a life of its own and people understand it different ways. So are you seeing the Great Resignation where you are, either at the university or throughout higher ed in the country as you talk to people? And what does it mean? What does the Great Resignation mean to you?
Definitely, from a consulting standpoint, I see from clients that are just seeing people leave, they're stressing out. Like we can't afford to lose anyone else. I'm seeing it at Chapman. I'm seeing it in our industry. Totally, like the number of jobs that are just popping up. Right, the same ones that are coming up, the same director positions that are kind of coming up on LinkedIn. You're like, oh, what's happening there, right? So like it is a problem. So Great Resignation means to me, I know that is in vogue, that term. I think it's more of a great disbursement, great reassessment. I don't know. No one's going home and not working. We have full employment. What is it, like 3.7, 3.9% right now? So we have almost at full employment. So we're not resigning, I don't think. We're just reevaluating after this whole COVID issue. So again, the existential crisis.
Right. And that reevaluation is occurring for lots of reasons. And they're not all about money, but maybe we need to go there for a little bit. So how much of this has to do with, are we paying people enough in our field versus are we treating them the way either they want, the gold rule or the platinum rule? Are we treating people the way they want to be treated?
Yeah. I would like to think, of course, I'm a little biased here because this is my show and the spotlight's on me. But yeah, I'd like to say I definitely treating my staff as how I want to be treated. I think it's really important. That's why I haven't had any turnover. I'm going on 3 years here, so I haven't had any turnover whatsoever. So I've been able to effectively build rapport, keep them motivated, identify issues before they get out of hand. I think that's a big part that we can talk about. So identifying burnouts, reassessing. So.
And by the way, once again, we have the Q&A functioning here, and I want to thank everybody for saying hello from, it looks like all over the country. If you do have thoughts about some of the issues that we're discussing that Kenan's delving into, please do feel free to raise those issues, and he can read them, I can read them. We do want to hear from you. There's an aspect to this with people, this great disbursement that you're calling it, which has to do with, of course, what we can do with our colleagues to make sure that they're being heard and valued, and where possible that they're seeing the kinds of income that they need to perform in the environment they're in right now. That's not always, though, under our power. So what are the other kinds of levers we can control so that we can, keep them feeling moved to stick around, do the work with us?
Right now, what I'm using, actually what we've been using is just the hybrid remote. Like if you don't have that going, like you are years behind and you're going to lose a lot more people. You have to, it's not an option anymore. Like we all, especially for prospect research, I'm talking like we can be remote. There's really no need for us all to be in office all the time. So that right there is a great benefit that people are looking for. Study after study. I mean, it's all on LinkedIn. People, that's what they want. They want the flexibility. And if we're going to continue, I want to address your comment about the salary. It's no secret that what we do it for a reason because we're passionate about it and there's a lower stress, right? That's the agreement we made to have a little bit of less salary than on the market rate. Fine. But I mean, when we're approaching like 20 to 30% lower than market rate, especially I'm in Orange County right here, right? So where a track home is $1 million, a starter home, what we would call starter home where I was from, right? So that's going to be tough to keep people around. So we have to get creative. And plus, when you don't have a hybrid, you're really limiting yourself, just your city, your county, right? Why not open up the talent pool to the United States? So like from an HR perspective, it doesn't make sense to me as well. So.
And I'm just hosting this series, but I can speak as an outsider looking in that DonorSearch has also been able to expand its workforce pretty significantly in the last couple of years, as it opened the doors to many remote employees. In fact, I don't even know if the term remote employee makes sense anymore. It just seems like people are just employees or their partners or their colleagues, whatever we want to call people, but their location is almost immaterial.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. No, we should even remove that from it because it does put a stigma on it, unfortunately. Now, there are some people who, I'm not backpedaling, it may sound like I'm backpedaling, but hear me out. If you are just starting in prospect research or any industry, you definitely want to have face time. You want to be in the office. So there is a caveat to that, I guess you'd say, right? If you are just beginning, you do want to be in and have that interaction, but it can be hybrid at first, right? It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, like all or nothing, right? You can do maybe warm them up to it. So I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, no, employees is what it is, Jay. So.
Right. And that does mean that people could choose to, in fact, relocate to places that are less expensive, which I'm also not suggesting, that it's great to live out in Orange County, but just that it does open the door to people with different kinds of talent, a different mix of talent, which might address some of the other issues we've had in our field. And I know we didn't talk about this as we chatted before, but one of the other things that is still, I think, a hot and hopefully an issue of longevity is the issue of diversity, equity, inclusion. And I know I'm missing additional letters out there as we look at those concepts. But one thing that hybrid environments and virtual environments offer is the ability to attract and retain talent throughout the development and fundraising and advancement enterprise of different backgrounds, that they don't all have to come from the circles we know or the places where we live with the same zip codes. Is this something that you've also seen in higher ed fundraising and prospect research in general as an ability to greater diversify or have a greater mix of experience in our offices as a result of this?
Oh yeah, that's definitely been a talking point I've seen in our circles, and I'm glad it's becoming more prominent. We're lifting it up. It is a discussion that we need to have. And again, and you're 100% right. If we can expand the net, we can allow to bring in that diversity that's needed, right? So, no, 100% on that. So, we need more discussion because we can do better. So, in the prospect research, yeah. So
absolutely true. Now I know we're focusing a lot on the prospect research for our discussion today, but I do want to make sure I can gain from some of your insight as you look at the rest of the operation, not just at Chapman, but generally, because for a long time I don't even know if this is true. We've said those major gift officers, they're in there for 18 months, 24 months, and they're gone. They're gone on to the next job. And then there are all these theories about why. The average tenure of a major gift officer. Are we seeing that also shifting at all as a result of what we've lived through with the pandemic and people being able to work virtually? And for that matter, is this kind of virtual environment something that you've seen in higher ed, advancement officers, face-to-face fundraisers can work in effectively?
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw it for the last two. They answered the last part. Yes, the last 2 years we were all remote. We were fundraising. We all hit our goals. So yes, you can do it, definitely. Have I seen, so you were asking if have I noticed a turnover from the major gift officers?
Right.
Yeah.
Has that changed?
No, I think it's grown exponentially. It's getting worse. So definitely, right. It's getting a lot worse, and for some reason, and everyone seems to be scratching their heads at it, like, what do we do to retain talent? What is it like? And hence why we're here. Hopefully, we can solve some world problems. So.
I hope so. We do have a good comment. Speaking of that, maybe there's a solution embedded in here where Sarah says, have you experienced burnout related to communications overwhelm within your team or personally, since you're more reliant and attuned to virtual communications tools? And do you have any tips for navigating, for example, email chains? We were talking about this right before.
Oh my gosh.
And other kinds of communications. It does seem like people are talking, which is great, but they're talking on 10 different platforms, a lot of things. Does that lead to burnout? And have you found ways to make that more streamlined?
Yeah, definitely, it does. If people, you can do email, you can do Teams, you can do Slack, all this stuff. And Slack is just a hangout to where you can get distracted, right? So, everyone's different. I'm not going to talk in absolutes, but what I've done is really just gone to the Excel, go to your calendar, block it off. That's all you have to do, and just make that time to be left alone. To answer your question though about burnout, about the over communication, oh, definitely. You got to be really careful. Like, there's a tendency to want to micromanage when you're remote, because I don't know what it is about managers and leaders. We're like, well, if we're not talking all the time, then are we doing our job? Like, you got to trust your crew. you hired them for a reason to do their job. Leave them alone and let them work. So.
Oh, that's funny, because I wonder if the problem is that the way we're also attracting, recruiting the managers themselves. I mean, if that's when you decided to go and take on the role at Chapman, was that framed in a way like, you should be doing this so often and talking to people and observing people? What was the understanding you had?
Oh my God, no, my supervisor is awesome. She, when she hired me, she's like, I'm going to give you basically carte blanche to come in, because she saw my background, my references, and she knew that I can come in and change and do some tweaks to the shop. And she let me just full on just do what it is and gave me the support that I needed. There was no micromanaging, like, this is what you got, how many times you got to hit these metrics. That's all developed by me. So, and right now.
That must,
yeah,
that must be helpful too. I mean, if the culture is like that in the office, then that must
amazing.
Also, yeah.
It also helps really just not take yourself so seriously. You know me, my feelings on that. I joke around a lot. It really does help. Like I said in the beginning, we took this job for a reason. No one's going to die on the table if that. I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not telling anyone to slack by any means, but I'm just saying we took this job for a reason. We enjoy it, and there's going to be a relatively lower stress, and we got to do everything we can as supervisors, managers, leaders to take a little bit of that back. That's one of the benefits of working in this industry. So, and I try to live by that every day. I do once a week team meetings. That's it, and I let them be. So, and we check in, and I'm always open. If even if I have time blocked off, I always take the calls if they need it, but they know, like, to kind of respect that, and only if there's like a big dumpster fire for me to put out, I have to go and I'll pick up, or they'll call me. So, but they're very respectful, and that's that's the communication that we've had, the understanding, and that's part of the high performing team, the algebra of it. Not to scare anyone with the math. I guess I could have said geometry. I don't know. It's a little bit easier in my opinion, but but that's the part of it. It's really just building that authentic rapport with your team. It's so essential now, more than ever.
And this doesn't mean that it's always everything is happiness and, you know, sweetness and light, right? This kind of toxic positivity we talk about. Where does that fit into the list of things we have to be watching out for, so we're not driving people bananas one way or the other, either by, you know, peering over their shoulders or by saying, oh, everything's great, it's going to be just perfect?
I like that. Toxic. Yeah, I think it was dysfunctional positivity, or the cult of the compulsory positivity that we have in fundraising. It's bizarre. You see LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is turning into Facebook now, which is unfortunate, about all this inspiration. Enough. Come on, guys. It's enough. Let's tap the brakes on that. That is a big part of it, Jay. So everyone's leadership style is different, and I think that's something that we need to talk about. Like, what it is, you need to find your own voice as long as it's authentic. Mine is, I am transparent and I am an information giver. I let my team in probably too much information. It has gotten me in trouble a few times, but I try to rein that in. So being just really authentic is so important, and that's what wins the respect, right? So, and if there's a problem, I'm just not like, hey, everything's great, okie dokie then, right? You know, you gotta have to. The Chris Farley, right? Remember the motivational speaker, that skit?
Yeah. Okay. For those who don't know it, that's the homework. That's the homework assignment for this session. It's
from the 90s, where I'm aging myself. So anyway, but
but he is gone. See what? Yes, positivity doesn't always carry you through, unfortunately.
Toxic positivity. Now that's a term I have not heard before. Love it. Well, yeah, I said dysfunctional positive, but we can say toxic, whatever. I mean, I've
heard that term also coming up. Maybe it's an East Coast thing about toxic positivity. Maybe it's because I'm too positive much of the time. I don't know. But sometimes this is a veneer anyway we adopt, I guess, right, to kind of cope with situations which can be bad. I mean, in our defense, sometimes we're positive because we're trying to shore people up, but it can have the opposite effect, I guess, is the...
You don't want to be negative, so I don't want that to be misconstrued by the audience. Don't be negative. Like, that's not going to help. Be pragmatic as much as possible. If there's an issue, address it. And I would say being cynical and being grumpy is a big sign of burnout. You need to be on the lookout, and even for yourself as a leader. At times, like I said, this whole COVID thing I'm no different. I joke around about a lot, but that's how I cope. I make jokes about things. That's my coping mechanism. This COVID experience has just been hard, if not harder than on me than, you know, other people. So, and there's been times where I'm just like, okay, let's take a step back here. So,
what's the hardest part of this been for you and for your team?
Ooh, that's a good question. For me, so with working at home, being more efficient, also there's a lot more work. Work does not go away. It pings at night. I'm getting emails. I'm a little neurotic. I find myself working at 5:30 in the morning. Megan has to come up here and tell me to knock it off. Be 7, 8 o'clock at night. You know, work will be there. Don't worry, it's going to be there tomorrow for you. And again, no one's going to die on the table if you don't send that out. So,
right.
And definitely with my team as well. I noticed I'm having to take more initiative from other departments because we're lower staff, and of course, what is the ratio? 1 to 5 fundraisers, 1 to 3, 4 to 5. We should for each researcher, right? So we've lost people, and we're taking on more and more and more, and we've actually expanded, helping out like marketing, and so I'm having to kind of push back on that a little bit too, because there's only so much we can do, and I don't want my staff to burn out because they are the most important asset. Everything that gets accomplished is because of my staff. As a director, you ready to tip a cow here?
Yeah, please tip away.
Let's do it. Let's stir the pot here. As a director, as a leader, your job is not making bios and research. Your job is leading your most valuable asset, and that's your team. I am constantly meeting, building relationships to gain support. A little bit of Queen's Gambit chess going on a little bit, not to get all Machiavellian here, but no, you have to gain resources for your team, and that's my job. And make sure that they're taken care of. So as much as I can.
And it's not just resources. When we talked earlier, you were talking about making sure that there's a seat at the table. So people don't just have responsibility, they also have some level of authority and agency. Maybe that's a better word. How do you do that? How do you get that seat at the table?
Yeah, so when I first started at Chapman, the best thing I do is just being consistent. Yeah, I would say just being consistent, being accurate, and going whatever you promise, over deliver. And that built up that trust factor. And everyone's like, wow, you know, they can do they know it. And you build that trust. Also, this is before the COVID time. The before times, we'll call it, right? I did a lot of networking. I know, it's so crazy. I don't know if we want to call it
crazy.
In the before times when you can go to and have lunch, drinks without a mask on. Anyway, so I'd be building those relationships. Like from day one, I was out just mingling, networking, and it's so important, especially as a leader. You have to get out. You cannot be behind your desk just typing away. Like, you have to get out and make those connections. Otherwise, you won't have a seat at the table. And we need to, as researchers, like, that needs to change. Like, we need to be at that executive strategy meeting. So
now, getting a seat is one thing. There are two elements to that. First is, of course, making sure you've got the relationships with leadership so they allow that to happen. And then the other part is on the back end, which is maintaining the influence once you've got that seat at the table. And I just, before we get into those two kind of bookends, I do want to ask you if that has changed. Because as you say, in the before times, it was whatever it was. I refuse to say the normal word over and over.
No.
But before, we had what we had, and some of our shops were more successful in building those relationships with maybe the executive, the C-level people, then having that authority, having a seat at the table, and maintaining the influence. But that's when everything was pretty much the same. We had campaigns and different things, but the culture was pretty much the same. But things have changed markedly. It's not just whether or not we're talking over a screen. It's a whole bunch of other factors in our personal lives. So how are we going to maintain that influence? And will it be harder given all the things that we've gone through together? Are people going to let us maintain that seat at the table in the after times?
In the after times, I don't think they have a choice. So I'm going to talk up my team. They've done such a phenomenal job. They've gained so much credibility throughout Chapman that we were begged to come to some meetings, and we were involved more and more. So I don't see that changing. It's just getting better and better. Everything that has been done, successfully implemented, has been remotely done. So so you asked about how I was building relationships. Like, I'm still calling deans. I'm having those conversations. Actually, a shout out to DonorSearch. I was using your inner circle tool that we're using with deans right now to kind of get a small connection. So that's something I've been kind of selling, and they're willing to work with us. So that's one way right there. Boom. So we can open up those Rolodexes and build, again, that rapport and the connection. It takes time. And I guess the best thing you can do, when you do it, just make sure you're transparent, you're honest, and you're just real. That's really going to be important, because people could sniff that out if you're being contrived.
That is so wise.
That was
so true. But it's also hard, because people are probably, they're always cautious about, am I going to have my job tomorrow? Because we've lived through that. So whether they're looking for something new, the great, whatever we want to call it, or they're just concerned about being able to pay the bills in a time of uncertainty. That's I can understand why authenticity might seem tough, but no.
I don't think. Can I jump in for a second? Sorry, Jay. I don't think that, considering the market right now and knowing how much at a premium, like, we have so much power or leverage right now as being the employees right now. So I don't know about being concerned about losing your job unless you're really screwing up, but that's not the case. So you have to really, really mess up. So right now, definitely the leverage is on us as employees. So there is a talent gap that needs to be filled, and people are looking like, I'm getting pinged on LinkedIn a lot. So it's crazy.
Yeah. The headhunting has gone wild.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Definitely. And I have another question, but I think something just popped up from Jennifer, who said, as a solo research shop, who's the best connection on campus outside of my advancement department? So unlike the Chapman shop where you're leading it, you have a person who's supported you fully. What is a soloist going to do to achieve some of these things?
Yeah, anyone, be strategic about it. Anyone who has a great Rolodex that you can sell your services, and it's always about what you can do to help them, him or her. Like, that's how you always want to frame it. So I would even just say, like, deans are a great example of that, right? There is still that where we need to work together. There's that synergy where there's that fundraising we scratch each other's backs. We need each other. So that's how I would approach that. So it's not going to be the same for all campuses, but yeah, even I've made friends with, I guess another one would be the IT department is IS&T for Chapman. That has been so beneficial for me building those relationships. Whenever there's a problem, I don't go to the ticket line and have to wait. I pick up the phone, it gets addressed.
Wow. Well, I hope nobody else
Boom.
at Chapman is listening right now, or else they're all calling. But yeah.
I know. It's like, I probably see that. Remember the talking too much and being too transparent? That's an example. This
That's
one might bite me.
Well, there's another way of looking at that with my toxic positivity mode on, which is that they are really awesome people in that department, and they are so responsive
sure
to you. So I'm glad you.
They have helped us tremendously.
Actually, it's true everywhere, right? Yeah. The IT folks, our colleagues there, we had better treat them well. Man.
Oh no, definitely. Your SQL reporter guy, like, or gal, like, you definitely want to be friends. You want to make those connections, and use it for a learning. I guess was it Jennifer who asked that? Yeah, Jennifer. Definitely just use it for a learning opportunity. Like, hey, I'm going to show you more of what I do. And when you build up those conversations, it doesn't have to be very long. Like the SQL backend reports guy will know more of what you want, and your reports will get a lot better. You won't have to do that back and forth of, hey, actually deceased. We don't want deceased in this report, right? We don't want whatever. They know more of what you're looking for. So definitely, and that's another benefit. So.
Ken, I know one thing I promised is that we wouldn't start getting into the weeds of things like AI and NFTs and every other acronym. But one thing I did want to ask you about those is that one other thing that's changed during these last 2 years has been that the technology we use and the things we need to learn, and even some of our titles and reporting structures have shifted. AI is an example of that. As people start to adopt those tools, whether they're doing it internally or with outside companies, is just one example. Crypto is another one that I see all the time in my world. And the question about how do we tackle that, DAFs are another one. But I'm not asking about those things so much as I am how, if at all, do we need to adapt ourselves and our departments to respond to these new things, so that when we're out of this again, AT, that we're really on the moment. We aren't just doing what we used to do. We're doing what needs to be done for the future.
For AC after COVID times, huh?
Right.
Well, yeah, here we go again. There's that stir in the pot. AI is getting a lot more powerful, a lot more accurate. And I know this discussion has come up on the ELF in the past, like, oh, they're coming for our jobs. Yes and no. We have to adapt, and we have to be more strategic, strategy focused, more relationship based. More, if you like it or not, we're fundraisers. Full stop. We're fundraisers. That's the stuff. The conversations like what you and I are having right now, connecting with our colleagues, really finding out what it is, having those strategy sessions, like how could we fit this donor into a certain spot where we might want them to give? Like, those are the kind of things that AI is going to be a long time to replace. If you're just an aggregator, I would say skill up, definitely. And that's what I've been telling my team as well. Like, you will become more useful in the after times. At least have a 30,000-foot view of what AI is, and that will make you more powerful, as you can at least translate it right to your colleagues. So at least you have more of that knowledge. So did I answer that? Sorry, there was a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot to unpack, and actually no one's asking about it right here, but I'm sure it's on everybody's mind, because if there's a new tool in the market, one of the first things that happens is people ask about it on Prospect Del, but they're asking one another, which I understand, because if you ask the vendor, then the vendor tells you what the vendor's perspective is. Yeah. So you want to talk to your colleagues, but I don't know that we're getting the information we need to make evaluative decisions. And I don't mean just about the tools and the companies, but about what role those things play in our life. How much investment do we want to make in these things in terms of our profession, in terms of our personal workload, the education we seek to get outside, because that's another cost center, is to go and get that training. And it's another opportunity cost, because we're doing that versus doing something else. So I think you did tackle it, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts as you look forward and see new things on the horizon, what people can do that's specific to their shops, so that they have, let's say, a carve out for a certain amount of education, or a carve out for a certain amount of, belonging to associations, or whatever is going to help advance them in their profession.
Yeah. First and foremost, that's a really good question. You don't need to spend a lot on professional development. So I've been toying around with this idea of making like an open source researcher. Every year I say I'm going to complete it, where you have links and resources on different levels on like how to train, kind of like the boot camp, but more something that's customized. But Udemy has free courses, edX. YouTube has so much good stuff, especially, and it doesn't have to be just on the research prospect fundraising side. I mean, just any sort of management, like Peter Drucker. Start getting, if you're a manager right now, start getting, it sounds a little cliche, but like his stuff is pretty much the gold standard for how to lead. So there's a lot of stuff that you can go, there's a lot of stuff you can online resources that you can tap into. LinkedIn Learning was good. It's a little expensive. I did like LinkedIn Learning, but I know not everyone has the budget for that. But so,
are our associations doing what they need to do? Is there anything we need to push back on them so that they're providing that kind of resources or training or discussion that's going to enable us to do what we need to do as we?
This is a shout out to you, my friend Jay. We're doing it right now. We're talking about something, again, it seems a little dry, but it's something that we definitely need to talk about. Like, we need the human capital. That's what we need to invest in, not the tools and little toys. I mean, they're great. They make our jobs so much easier. But right now, we need to focus on keeping our staff happy, motivated, have a purpose, right? So, and just investing in them.
Yeah.
So, what is it like? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh man, there's that fog I was talking about. I'll share with the group here. I did have COVID. I just got better here with the last week. So it's a real thing, like this COVID fog. Like you start talking, like I said, and you just like, it's almost like stage fright when you're like high school and you have that presentation. Like you're just like, what was I saying? So bear with me. We were talking about, see, there I go. I just got us off on that one. We were talking about turnover, wasn't it?
I've lived in a perpetual brain fog my whole life, Canon. So you started here. I was like down here. So I'm barely catching up to you. We did have a question that was kind of a good follow-up to that from Alexander, who had said, did they hear you correctly that there's a 1-to-5 ratio of researchers to gift officers at Chapman?
Yeah.
So in the spirit of, supporting staff, I mean, staff ratios are always an issue.
And that's too high. I would like to see 1-to-3 to 1-to-4. That's too high. Actually, I think we're more 1-to-6 right now. And so without diving too much into the intricacies of what we're doing. So it's like I said, we've had some challenges and we're taking on a lot more and we're going to have to push through, but I'd like to see that number lowered. So yeah, you definitely, it gets a little high, then you get stretched and you see the quality, it has to come down. Something has to give. Right. And I don't want anyone to lose their credibility, because the fastest way to torpedo, and again, we're talking about getting a seat at the table. If you want to torpedo your credibility, you start getting sloppy on your reports, and the executive sees that, like you're toast. It'll take years to buy that back. So.
Wow. And that's something, if it's a matter of not having enough people to do the work, then it's somewhat out of your control too. We have another comment from, I won't even mention a name because I don't want them to be associated with the ratios here. In fact, if other people want to list ratios, please feel free to do it in the Q&A. We have one person who said they're a 1-to-20-ish ratio right now. Yeah. And again, that's not that person who's making that decision. I'm sure that's a decision that they are living with. So first of all, our heart goes to you, because that's a lot of work.
Our heart goes to you. And if we have any executives on this call, like, we have to address this. Any leaders on here, like research is not something that we can skimp on. This is something that we need to address. We need the strategic information. We know that we're worth it, and we know what we can bring in. The ROI on research it's tremendous. And it's insanity that we're not investing more in it. So.
Well, and we're having a comment from someone else who said they've typically seen a ratio of 1-to-8, and in their last job, 1-to-13. So we're seeing this all over the place, because, of course, we had a comment earlier from someone who said they were the only person in research, and we don't even know how many people that they are supporting, serving as colleagues. There's a person who just mentioned that in their research position at a medical center, that they had 2 to 3 researchers for 50 gift officers. And another person who said at a college, the ratio is 1-to-8. So not unusual.
And not everybody, let's talk about that. Not everybody has the money. I get it. We all are jockeying for resources. I get that. And we'd like to have bigger staffs, and we have to keep bloat under consideration. I get that, right? the middle management admin can blow up, especially higher ed. We don't want to see that because we do need to be more efficient. If you are at 1 to 20, 1 to 50, like I would just, you need to negotiate like your expectations. You need to mitigate and advocate for yourself because they'll keep piling on that, right? So that's a part of where you have to.
So let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is somewhere where you can really help because you've been able to advocate for that successfully. And I know that Chapman might have some resources that others don't. But part of this is also figuring out, what is essentially in the for-profit jargon your pitch deck for new staff. How do you what are your, I don't know, 3 best arguments for why we need to have researchers in the shop, especially in an environment where there's a perception that great tools can replace great researchers. And by the way, I'm sure that my friends at DonorSearch who provide this platform, so if you don't know anything about them, click on the button, learn about them. But even I think everybody at that company would say the same thing. They aren't supporting the industry. They're not replacing it. So you have a friend there. And I think that most vendors I know would say the same thing. So it goes back to the same thing. You need to be able to go and tell somebody you've identified or some buddies that you need researchers and prospect development professionals to do the work, no matter what the tools are. What are your best arguments for that?
Yeah, it's all about the money. It's all about the money. You have to show what you can bring in. What we started doing, we had these strategy sessions that we run. You start tagging people that you bring in, and you can say research is attributed to bringing in such amount of money, right? That's the easiest. I mean, you can do this on Excel. If you have Salesforce, this is very easy tracking, right? It's all about, you have to put a financial, I mean, I hate to be all about money, get all Gordon Gekko here, but you have to put a price tag on it, right? So you have to, this is what the small investment initial, but look at how much more that we can bring this out. And I would even argue, even for like the mid-level, for annual gifts, like having a good researcher. And the second part is we can expand those gifts. We can make them, we can bump them up. We'll help you, because most fundraisers didn't know, like, oh, they gave 30,000 to another institution. Like, I had no idea. I was only asking 5, right? For like an annual level. So, and then lastly, research, and this goes to show, I mean, I pulled the reports on our strategy. Like, the strategy has just been so much better. It's no longer just the knee jerk, like, oh, just sent a card, oh, just made a call, right? The strategy is actually getting a lot better. You can see that the fundraisers are doing their side of the job too. And that's something that's our supervisor, our executives are seeing, like, they're like, wow, like the connections are getting a lot better now. So, in part by good research and getting those nuggets of information.
Right. And I know we could probably spend another, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just had to clarify. I want to say it was all because of, I am my favorite topic. I'm not going to lie, but I'm not that cocky. So it is.
Well, that's not how you're representing yourself here. You're just giving us good wisdom. I mean, one thing that's powerful about this whole discussion is that it provides something translatable. If people can take the goals that people that we're working with need to achieve, and then have our work relate to those goals, it becomes a lot easier. That's our universal translator from Star Trek. And so it enables us to speak in a language that those other people understand. We're not compromising our values, our objectives, and our people. We're simply making sure that they are understandable and translatable, which is a very different thing. So I think at least you made that case to me. With the exception of the reference to Gordon Gekko and Chris Farley, I'm completely with you today. So.
I was going to try to sneak in
Chris Farley playing Wall Street would be great.
Oh, that would be awesome. I thought about making a Joe Rogan joke on this, but I was like, no, I don't want to get us pulled from Spotify. So.
Oh wow, no, that's the one place where this is not going to go. And this is an ad. I realize I'm making an ad as I do it, but there is a podcast series that we do as part of the Philanthropy Mastermind series, and it is on Spotify. Now that I think about it, I have to talk about that with people. But anyway, that contains a lot of conversations like this one, and we haven't had you there, Ken, and we've explored so many issues here that have been powerful. So I'm so glad you did this. But before we kind of round up and close, I want to see if there's any kind of last particle of wisdom or cow tipping you'd like to do to kind of wrap up this theme about, of course, again, about making sure we have a high-performing research shop.
Sure. Oh, thanks, Jay. Be real, everybody. Be real, be transparent, build those connections, make sure it's authentic. I know I'm repeating here, but there'll be some more nuggets of information I swear here. When you have your meetings, especially your strategy meetings, if you're going to be doing hybrid remote, there's a couple things that I've noticed that we've implemented that really increase just the value and just the overall meeting is make sure that the camera's on. I require the cameras to be on. Like you can't hide behind like your picture. Like people are more engaged during meetings. You don't have fun, sitting there doing this and you call them like, huh, what? Like, you don't have any of that. Like people, you're on call, right? So another thing that we've done, and this is a cow that we're going to tip here, is ban cell phones if you can. Get your executives on it from the meetings. There's absolutely no excuse. Jay, if I'm sitting here like going, if I'm sitting here going at this, right, and like what am I telling you right now? This is social intelligence 101. Like we're supposed to be people. And if I'm sitting here doing this, like what am I telling you? Right. It's disrespectful. So if you can, ban it. You guys will survive an hour without your phones. Your conversations will be a lot deeper, more meaningful, and you'll just get the engagement that you need. So
the power of actually listening and looking at people for real. Yeah, we could talk about that all day, but we'll just have to wait until the next time. Canna, I not only want to thank you for this, but I want to thank you for doing this on the heels of COVID hitting your house and of your wonderful recovery from your loft there, and giving us great advice as we think about how to do everything except maybe where to place a potted plant. I think that's the one part.
That's something I've learned from this. I will definitely make sure it's not, so it doesn't look like I have a feather growing out of my head here. So no, Jay, this has been a lot of fun. I enjoy these conversations. I hope everybody that we talk about this more. This is something that we need to, even though, like I said, it's kind of dry, we need to talk about it. We need to focus on our teams on how to best lead. So,
well, nothing dry about people being happy with their work and feeling like they've done something rewarding with their day. I mean, otherwise, why do it? That's the Great Resignation. Obviously, there's no Great Resignation in your shop, so we have something that we can learn from what you've been doing. So thank you for that. I also want to thank everybody who's hung out with us throughout. We've been asked if there is a slide deck. There were no slides. This was a conversation today. But we do have sessions that are CFRE accredited with slide decks. Those occur 2 or 3 times a month. So please do look at the schedule at DonorSearch.net for all that information. Plus, you can see recordings of this and every other thing we do over on the YouTube channel. They're all being posted there now. We've just started the CFRE channel at the DonorSearch YouTube page. And if you check out your favorite podcasting network, I can't believe I'm listing so many things. You'll find all the podcasts we have there with great conversations with people about their personal lives. It's sort of a fresh air of fundraising. So if you want to hear about where people come from and where they're going and how they want to be remembered, that's what the Masterminds podcast is all about. But I'm so grateful to all of you for hanging out with us today. I know that you've learned as much as I have from Canon, and I hope you'll join us next week. We have another one of these sessions coming up. Look at the calendar. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. It's been fun.